Hey everybody, James Introcaso here. Before we start the show, I wanted to let you know about a sponsor for this episode of Tabletop Babble. I'm talking about Kobold Press. Kobold Press is the maker of fine 5th edition D&D products such as the Deep Magic expansion, the Tome of Beasts, and now, of course, the Midgard campaign setting updated for 5th edition D&D. Midgard is a dark fantasy setting, and you can get more Midgard every month or so with the Warlock Patreon. Warlock is an awesome little supplement that comes out and it goes into your inbox. It's supported through Patreon, and in addition to all of the amazing content you get, like new class options, new story options, new monsters, new magic items, all stuff that you can plug into your D&D game, whether you're playing Midgard or not. You also get a Warlock lair when you contribute at certain levels to the Patreon, which is an awesome dungeon you can drop into any game. You want to check it out. If you're not playing in Midgard, you should check it out. It is amazing dark fantasy 5th edition from the mind of Wolfgang Bauer. But even if you do not want to move your campaign from its current setting, you will get a ton out of Warlock, as I have. There is so much goodness in here that you can easily pick up and put into any D&D game. Check it out at patreon.com/koboldpress. That's patreon.com/koboldpress. This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. Today on the show, I am talking with Mysty and Dan about UNCon. UNCon is an amazing convention that aims to make everyone feel welcome. Gamers of all stripes are welcome at UNCon. It is Misty's dream that she has put together, so I am going to let them take it away. All right, everybody. Now I am here with two people who I'm really excited to have on Tabletop Babble for the first time. Before we jump into UNCon, which I'm really, really excited to talk about, let's go around the table and tell me who you are and what you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games. Misty, let's start with you.
Sure. So I'm Misty Vander. I do a lot of D&D play, DMing, playing, talking, reviewing. So reviewing products, whether they're dice, candles, screens, stuff like that. And I just like to open up a lot of conversations about D&D in general, as well as my main focus currently is making D&D more accessible to all parts of the community, whether that be visual impairment, physical disabilities, or especially in my case, people who are deaf or hard of hearing.
Excellent. Well, it is awesome to have you here, especially on this audio medium. One of the things that I want to do is get some transcripts going for the podcast as well. So we'll have to talk more about that later. But yeah, it's awesome to have you here. I started following you on Twitter probably because I was following Lisa Chen and she retweeted you and it was like, oh, this is awesome. This is great stuff. So I'm really, really excited to have you on. And Dan, who are you and what do you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
My name's Dan Simon. For the most part, I just play them. Playing a lot of D&D. I was running Adventure League games at our local gaming store, which is where I met Misty. And I also do some character drawings when I have time, when I'm not doing my real-life job. So
yes, you're an amazing artist. We should shout out. Your work is really, really good. So welcome. Welcome to Tabletop Babble. It is awesome to have you both today. We are going to talk about UNCon. So, Misty, UNCon is your baby. What is UNCon?
UNCon is short for Unconventional Gaming Convention. It is a brand new convention that is created in this small city in Ontario. Basically, it's a gaming convention like all others. You know, you've got your D&D tables, you've got a panel, you've got your card games and tournaments and all that. What makes Unconventional special is that we focus really hard on accessibility as well as inclusivity, right? Just making it a main focus that everyone feels comfortable and safe to be coming to a convention with strangers, with people they know in large numbers, to come there and feel comfortable to sit at a gaming table and play.
Yeah, that is super, super cool. And it's a great thing. Growing the hobby is an excellent goal. You know, I was taken by this when I saw this, that this was a goal of yours that you had. You wanted to make gaming more accessible for more people and have a convention where people can go. Have you been to a lot of conventions? And do you find that a lot of conventions are not as accessible as you're planning on making Uncon?
So I have been to quite a few conventions, though I did take quite a few year break from them after certain incidences. But usually when I went to them, they were in wargaming capacities, or basically things like Fan Expo and all those kind of things. What I found about them, like if we're excluding how inaccessible a lot of them are for people with like physical disabilities, I found them very they're daunting for one thing, especially if you're a marginalized person. But at the other thing, they're not very inclusive, or especially when I used to go, they weren't. I feel like things are getting better. But in general, on a whole, you see these conventions run by the same type of people, the same group of people, and it's always targeted the same group of people. And so people who aren't in that group, it gets to be a really not unsafe, but like it's just an incredibly daunting thing to go there and to feel comfortable and safe to be there. And unfortunately, incidences do happen to people who might not be in that group, that demographic at those conventions. And I just want to make sure people who are not in that demographic have a place where they can feel, yeah, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. I belong here because everybody does.
Yeah, and it sounds like I'm going to assume the demographic is one that I fall into for most of these conventions.
Yes.
You know, and they are big conventions. Well, I think you're right. We're definitely changing and we're seeing a lot of good things happen. They're still very daunting and still very hard for people who have accessibility issues. And there are still lots of incidences where people who are marginalized feel unsafe. All conventions, I think, can do better. A lot of them strive to do better. But it sounds like from the get-go, the plan is to make this a convention where lots of people are going to feel welcome and safe, which is a great thing. You know, that's super, super awesome and super important for role-playing games, I think in particular, because of sort of if not everyone is comfortable, the gaming experience is not as fun, for one thing. For the other thing, anything can happen in a role-playing game, and therefore you want it to feel safe and you want it to be secure, because when people don't feel safe, that sucks. That's the worst.
The thing is, like, when I used to go to conventions and I stopped going, to be honest, I was sad. I miss going to conventions. I miss playing in that large group of people. I love crowds. I'm a very strange person who loves being really close to a lot of people. um, like, I really missed that for a long time. I missed that community, but I felt too nervous to go and too scared of the what's going to happen when I go again. And I just feel like I met a lot of people out there in the past year that have the same feelings as that. And that makes me feel really sad because like our community shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't be so afraid to join us. And I think we're just better when we all can join in together.
Well, I find it upsetting as well. So.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. So Dan, how did you get involved in Uncon?
So there was a lot of motivating factors behind it. I've always been a big believer in everyone's welcome to play D&D, which is my favorite game, and I'm very conscious of my own privilege. I'm trying to be more conscious of it. I'm working on it, and coming to Dueling Grounds in Peterborough, I made friends with a lot of different types of gamers who are of marginalized communities. We've got a lot of different type of people that play there. So there was a situation where there was an event that we wanted to attend, and it just wasn't very safe. I got to a point in dealing with the situation where the only reason I was going is because some of the people that would have felt marginalized wouldn't have been safe, and I would have been going just to make sure that they had some sort of touch point. And then in conversations with Mysty about this and on Twitter and online and in real life, we just said there's a better way. And Mysty started talking about doing her own convention. And I've been her cheerleader. I've just been doing everything I can to support her. She's a firecracker, just a complete rocket engine when she gets an idea in her head. And I've just been trying to shovel as much coal into the engine as I can to keep her going. And whatever she needs, I've been just trying to support her on that. So I think it's an amazing idea.
Yeah, having friends who, when you have an idea, having friends who support that and say that is a great idea is one of the most important things in that idea becoming something more. And Misty, when we were setting up this podcast, you basically said that. I think you said the biggest cheerleader is one of the things that Dan was among some other things. He's also done some art for the convention, right?
Oh yeah, he does. He designed our website and the logo and all that stuff, and we have gotten so many compliments over that. And we wouldn't, honestly, the convention wouldn't even exist without Dan, because just such a huge supporter. And I do get nervous when taking on big tasks like this. Is quite a big task, and I get really nervous, and it's very intimidating. But with like a bunch of other people have been helping too, like Leah, like my partner, Dueling Grounds themselves, but Dan has certainly been there from day one, being like, yeah, we can do it. Like this is something that is going to happen, not can happen, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, undertaking a convention, big or small, is a huge, huge task. There's a lot that goes into it, especially when you're putting in the extra work to make everyone feel welcome. In addition to then fighting off people who might think that because something is trying to make people who are marginalized feel safe, that it doesn't make them feel safe, which I would guess is not the case. I would guess that folks like me and Dan, who is working on the project, are also welcome at this convention.
100%. We're like, I think it's funny to think that people like us wouldn't be welcome at this, because the whole tagline is that the gaming is for everyone. We want to include everyone except people who want to exclude other people. And I think that's the bottom line: is we want everyone who's enthusiastic about the game, and it doesn't matter who you're sitting down with, because I think the experiences that I've had playing with a new variety of people has been eye-opening, just with the kind of creativity that comes to the D&T tables from we have some people that play on the spectrum, and the way they think about the game is fascinating. Or I hadn't played with girls a lot before I started playing at the local gaming store, and their approach to the whole alignment thing with dealing with monsters is completely different from the murder hobo type style of play that I was brought up on. I've had two female players attempted to befriend goblins, and it was completely baffling to me as a DM, but I just kind of rolled with it, and it's a lot of fun. And I think for people like me, there's a feeling of defensiveness when someone says, I don't feel included. And when you get past that defensiveness and you just sort of let yourself listen to what they're saying, there's a realization that it's not an attack on you. It's them saying, hey, I want to be your friend. That's the bottom line, I think.
Yeah, totally. Misty, do you agree? As far as being sort of defensive and stuff goes, you're the one with the perspective on the other side, right? You are part of these communities that get marginalized. It sounds like you have some experiences in your past where you have felt that way, which is sort of the impetus for creating UNCon. What are you doing? What sort of steps are you taking at UNCon to make people feel included?
So, other than the visible representation, which I'm trying to work really hard on, which I think is important, because the first step to feeling safe at a convention is, oh, that person's like me, and they're there. Not only are they there, but they're running it like that. That's an immediate thing. On top of that, we're focusing really hard on safety tools at all tables, whether that's a card table, wargaming table, doesn't matter. There's safety tools there. You have to have at least one. It's not an option to not have safety tools at the table, because you know what? Every table is better for it. There's no negative side effects to safety tools. That includes things like the X and O card, support flowers, lines and veils. And then we also have a little space that's completely separate from the convention itself. That's just like, honestly, a couple steps away. It's like a separate room, but the doors all closed and everything. And we're going to always have at least one like volunteer member there, where you can come and you can be by yourself and just kind of relax. And just like, because I know people get overwhelmed by crowds, or say an incident happens and you need to go somewhere private and talk to somebody like one-on-one, there will be somebody there to support you. Or you can just be alone in this space where you just have the space to, decompress, be somewhere private, and just kind of, step away from the crowd, away from the game. We have open tables, meaning anyone can sit at them. That also means anybody can leave them at any point in time without being questioned. If you're at the table and you're just feeling like you need to leave, you are freely allowed to go without being questioned why, or without any negative side effects following you. All the game runners will be well versed in these. We're going to, once they're all affirmed and selected, we'll be going over the safety tools and everything else. On top of that, we have several reporting systems, whether it is that you need help at the table or if an incident happens and you need us to help deal with it. We'll have multiple reporting systems, whether that's online, whether that's like staff that'll be floating around the room, whether that's like email or Discord, and as well as like the safety room.
Wow, that is so already a ton of work that I'm seeing, and we haven't even gotten into the planning of games, the scheduling of games, that sort of thing. That's really great that you are doing that. Do you have a lot of help, or is this all sort of on your shoulders right now, Misty?
I definitely have help. Definitely. I understand life is so busy and we all have our day jobs. Like everyone that is helping has a full-time job. So like I do have help and I have people, like I have somebody helping with the vendors, and she, like Leah's amazing. She's been an amazing support in this too. She's definitely my secondhand woman, but a lot of it is coming to me right now. But we use like a kind of like a committee board where I can go to and be like, hey, like, does this sound good? And I have a friend, Hannah, helping with the policies and the inclusion policies and everything too. And I just kind of bounce all these ideas off of them because I want their input. I want the local community who's going to be there. I want them to have the input, and the marginalized people in our local community to have the input about what they want there and how it should be done. So I definitely have some help.
That's really, really cool that there are people out there helping, especially if you all have full-time jobs outside of this. I feel like I can't stress enough how much work a convention is. So my wife is an event planner, so I see a lot of the stress of planning events and things like that. So let's like dive into the fun. What sort of events are going to be happening here, and about how big, like how much space are we having at this convention? Because it sounds pretty big right now.
So space-wise, it's one giant 5,000 square foot room. And then we have a vendor hall is what it is, with a separate little small room for a couple other vendors, and then like a hallway of vendors kind of thing where you get to walk down this vendor hall. And then we have our private little smaller safe area. We're going to have vendors, about 10 to 12 of them, all local. We're focusing, the city we live in is already a very focused local city. Like we have all these local events and we're very focused on supporting local people. So we're trying to make sure all our vendors are local and support that cause too. Then for the gaming tables, still a bit up in the air about the specific number, but we should have over 30 tables for the first year. So the kind of events we have will be RPG games like D&D Adventures League, probably Pathfinder, Dungeon World, Call of Cthulhu. Basically, I'm accepting anything people want to run. We got some old school D&D too. Lots of people are wanting to run AD&D, so I'm all for that. And then we have a couple Magic tournaments. They're like on-demand Magic tournaments happening throughout the day, as well as a pretty large Yu-Gi-Oh tournament is happening there as well. And then we have wargaming, so a couple options for wargaming tables. And at one point in the day, well, in the evening rather, we have a panel of cosplayers that are both local as well. Oh, and we have a few LARPers doing a couple local LARPing. How do you say LARPing? Demonstrations.
I think the most, you forgot to mention, like we're doing a lot of kid-focused stuff in the morning. I personally really love the idea of trying to bring in a younger audience, because I think the more people we bring to gaming, the better it gets. But that was Misty's push right from the beginning, so I'm a little surprised she forgot to mention it. But
yeah, sorry, I'm actually running those games.
Yeah, she's running those games, and I think it's one of the highlights of what we're doing is it's not just for the older crowd, but we're trying to bring kids into this and make it a family-friendly environment.
Nice. That's really cool. If we don't get the next generation of RPG players started, they're never going to play. And so I think it's really great to bring in kids to play board games, war games, RPGs, that is part of being inclusive is including kids sometimes, right? And then it's also really great because people who have kids get to come, and it's not as much of a burden on them, right?
Yeah. The thing about the kids is how we're doing it is I'm going to have a rating for every single table on the site, as well as on the convention brochure thing, that convention booklet rather. And the more adult content games will be geared at our late night spot, which is 8 p.m. onwards. So if you still want that heavy adult content, that's when you can do it. And we recommend parents don't bring children then. In the morning, we have ages 6 to 12. So really young children games that are being provided, and there are RPGs as well. And so I'm an ECE, so my actual job is I educate children, and I run a home daycare, so I'm really well versed in children. And so I'm doing a couple RPG games for children under the age of 12. So I really hope that parents I think it's great. I already played D&D with my daughter when she turned 4. I did not tone it down. I totally killed her. She totally died.
Wait. I don't think we can gloss over this story. Please tell me how you killed your daughter in D&D.
We were playing Tyranny of Dragons, so I was running through with that. And then we were playing the modules, so it wasn't the hardcover adventure. So I was playing through the modules, and it was in that first module, the Defiance and Flan, and she just really did not like that not the innkeeper, the person that sends you on that quest.
Oh, yeah.
So we finished the quest, and she brings back this dragon egg thing, right? And she just tried to kill the guy in the inn. And I was like, what is happening? So it just went from there.
And tell him how old your daughter is too.
Oh, she was 4 when that happened. She's 5 now.
So Sean Merwin, who wrote Defiance and Flan, is a listener of this podcast and is a great human. So Sean, if you're listening,
4-year-olds do not like your innkeepers.
Yeah, I was going to say 4-year-olds do not like your innkeepers, and you indirectly killed a PC of a 4-year-old.
Yeah, it's fine. She got to play a kitty cat. That's what really got her going, is that she got to play. She was playing a tabaxi, and she was like, I'm just a cat. It's awesome.
That's great. So this comes up for me a lot. I have a 4-year-old niece and nephew. Are you able to, it sounds like you are definitely able to start with kids as early as 4?
Yeah. That's parental discretion, really,
Sure.
And based on the child, right? My child is like me. She never stops talking, and she's just very animated and very into make-believe stuff. So D&D, as it is, just 5e, is, I found, as long as I was using a map and a mini, she needed those visuals, She can't, I wouldn't try to play theater of the mind with a 5-year-old, but there are RPG games that I feel would fit all children of those ages, and D&D can also work for younger children. But for very young children, there's RPG games like No Thank You Evil is a really great one. But yeah, D&D, you can just simplify the math, really, and it's easy.
That's really, really awesome that you're doing that and that you'll be running then for kids. So will you be running RPGs for kids, or will you be teaching board games in the morning?
In the morning, I'll be running, one's an RPG game, one's an RPG card game. So No Thank You Evil I'll be running, as well as Once Upon a Time. So they're both geared at children, ages 5 and up. The Once Upon a Time one's more geared at 8 to 12-year-olds, but they're definitely RPG games. It really starts to get them in that D&D mindset of role playing, and you have a character that you're playing type of thing. Or that the Once Upon a Time is more about collective storytelling, which is really awesome because it also helps children develop their social skills, about turn taking, about listening to others, about just creating a story in general. It's great. And we do have board games too, and there's lots of family games, and we actually have a local board game company coming that will also be demoing board games, and some of them will be for children as well. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. This sounds like a great convention. I gotta get myself to Ontario.
Don't go anywhere. There's more Tabletop Babble coming up.
Hey there, Alex Basso here.
And Rudy, co-hosts of Game O'Clock.
Don't split the podcast network's premier video game show.
Every month, the two of us and a special guest go through a game genre's history, some of our favorites within it,
some of our least favorite games, and where we hope the genre goes moving forward. We've talked about shooters, MOBAs, classic adventure games, and even more.
If you like video games, you gotta check us out.
All right, back to the show.
So you both, you mentioned you both play Adventurers League and you have this con coming up. So for both of you, what steps do you take when new people show up at the table who have never played D&D or an RPG before? How do you sort of get them invested and interested in the game and make sure that they have a good time? What are some steps that y'all take? And Dan, let's start with you. We haven't heard from you in a while.
I think what I try and do is try and take an interest in the character they want to play. We've had a few that have shown up with a character already built, and so we just look over their sheet and make sure everything's AL legal. Or if we hand them a pre-gen, if they don't have any idea, then we give them a rough run of the rules and just I try and be pretty balanced with how I run the table. And so what I'll do is what I've tried to do is make sure that there's always a veteran sitting near the beginner to help them out, so that they feel like there's always help there, and we'll slow the game down when it needs to make sure that they're catching on to the mechanics. And then when there's a moment where they can shine, I really like when people get to describe their kills. When they've been battling a monster and then they're the one that get the killing blow. I'm like, tell me how that looks. Like, what does that look like? And when they get to the chance to sort of describe their powerful swing with their axe or how the fireball flies from their fingertips, I find that's really the moment they start to get hooked. Or if they say something funny and we can get the table laughing, I think those are the moments where they really sort of click into the game and realize how much fun it can be.
The laughing is a good cue that someone is invested. I like that.
Dan is definitely good at that. When I started in Adventures League, I played at his table. Was my first table I got to play at for a long-term campaign in AL, and I'd been playing Homebrew 3.5 for a decade before that, so 5e was new to me as well as Adventures League was new to me, and Dan was just so great about taking your character and just letting you run with it. He let me do so many bad things. And it was just so much fun because I was such a murder hobo character. It was great. And he just, I don't know, he really helped me be able to role play what I wanted to role play. And it was just, I don't know, the games were always fun. They were always full of laughs. It was great. And just everyone was invested all the time. It was great.
I just love this shared history in gaming between you two, too. It really makes for a great story of we're starting a con, So, and Mysty, what steps do you take when someone new, perhaps 4 years old, sits down at the table and wants to play D&D for the first time?
So at my AL table currently at the store, I actually have a 10-year-old who started at my table, and we're playing Curse of Strahd. So this 10-year-old, she got in deep. Her parents are both there too. They're all for it. They're all for just this dark, twisted campaign, because everyone knows what Curse of Strahd's like, right? We're running the hardcover, so she's in it for the long run. And I find just like what Dan said, going off her character and this, oh my goodness, this 10-year-old, the things that she comes up with, all the table just stops. And oftentimes the table behind us, when she says things, and they're like, what are you doing? And it's just so surprising that it's coming from a child, because their minds are just so amazing, the things that they can think of. So I just try to invest in that. And I'm like, yeah, you can do that. Just do what you want to do. Just what you can think of, I'm going to try to make it happen, and we'll do it together. And what I did for them, because the whole family started playing D&D together, none of them had played before, is I suggested getting these cheat sheets for them so that they could help learn how to, what can you do in a turn? Because a lot of people who are new to D&D are very confused when it comes to an initiative turn. They don't realize you can dodge and, you can do all these other things in your initiative. So I have these cheat sheets that I love that I gave to all of them that they always look over and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this instead. So I think that's really good for new players too. So
yeah, that's a really, really cool idea. Mysty, earlier you had said, so I think and I know a lot of our audience is familiar with X and O cards because we've talked about them on this podcast before. But you mentioned flowers, which is not something I am familiar with, and I'd love to know what that is and how it works, because it sounds really interesting.
Sure. So I'm not the best. I'm so bad at explaining these concepts, but I'll try. So Dan, jump in if I'm explaining it poorly, please. Support flowers is what they're called. And I actually learned about them from a local convention called Breakout Con. They have them there as an option to use at your table. So basically, it's a lot like the X and the O card, just with one extra step. That's all. You have a flower with 3 different colors of petals. You have red, you have yellow, and you have green. So green is exactly like the X card. It means, yes, I love this. You touch it when there's like, oh, sorry, not like the X card. Sorry, like the O card. Jeez. Like the O card. You touch that when it could be some kind of high tension content that might usually the DM might be like, oh, I don't know, can I do this? Like, this is something that could, make people feel uncomfortable. So if you're a player and you recognize that's the kind of content that's happening, you just tap that green card and you're like, yeah, I like this. I want more of this. I want to keep going where we're going. It's just used to not interrupt gameplay and to encourage content. And then you have the yellow card, which means I don't want to go any further with this content. It's okay that it was mentioned. It's okay that this is happening, but I would like to not divulge further, or I don't want to concentrate on it. I'd rather just kind of let the curtain fall and fade to black kind of thing and just kind of go off to something else. It's kind of like a warning sign, like we're about to get into red flower / X card territory. And then the red flowers, or the red petals, however you want to do it, they are exactly like the X card in the way that, no, stop. I don't, we need to either remove this content or change it because it is making me uncomfortable.
Wow, that's really cool. I also love just the visual of a flower with 3 different colored petals. Sounds awesome. Dan, are these methods that you were using when you were running AL?
When we started learning about this stuff, because when we started at AL, there wasn't anything, which was fine, I think, just because of the mix of the people that were there. The organizer, Jeff Ludgate, is just one of those incredibly positive people that just creates an atmosphere that was okay. But as these issues started coming up in other conversations, we were like, we need to have it. So the X card got introduced as a mandatory thing at our tables with 100% DM support. We did have a few people that they had their issues with it, not because they didn't support the idea of it, they just didn't like the way the tool functions. So we're still developing other tools and trying to find stuff that works for people for people with different disabilities and different abilities, that will work for them. That's why we're saying that there has to be some sort of support tool on the tables at UNCon, but it's your choice, and it just has to be explained how it works before the game starts. We had the X card on the table for months, and it's never been used. So I haven't really had an incident where I can say, it worked, it didn't work, but I'm happier to have it on the table.
Definitely. It's at least if it's there, it is there if someone needs it, which is a great first step for sure.
I think that's the most important step, is just saying, just by embracing the tool, you're saying, I'm open to these conversations. I'm trying to be a safe person. I'm trying to create a safe environment for you as a gamer. So I think those are just having the tool itself, whether or not it needs to be used, is a signal that we're trying to do better. And I hope that's enough of a flag for the people that might be intimidated about coming to a convention, or might be intimidated about coming up to the local gaming stores. If those things are on the table, that they would feel more comfortable sitting down at the table with a bunch of people they don't know.
Mm-hmm. And the thing about the X card is I've never seen it used before either, ever, not once. And I don't know anybody personally that's ever used one either. And I use it in streams, and I've been on streams on Off the Table that also use it, and I've still never seen it used because it's just there. Some people are just so against them because they're going to be used all the time. And I'm like, no, they're only used when something is happening that a person needs to say stop. And it's just a comfortable way someone can say, hey, stop, but as a DM, I love having it there in the store when I'm running a very high content dark game like Curse of Strahd, especially with a child at the table, because we've run into some content that I'm like, as a DM, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm about to describe something that I'm very concerned about might make other people feel really uncomfortable. But you know what? The X card's right there. We've run into, suicide and, all the content that Curse of Strahd has is very dark. And so I'm just so happy that the X is there, because then as a DM, I can just go with it. And as soon as somebody is like, hey, no, like, this isn't okay. I had an instance where somebody at another table overheard content that they did not like. And so we developed a system privately because they can't tap the X card at their table to stop something at my table. So we developed a private system in case that content came up again, or in case they needed to X card me from a different table. But I just think it's important steps to take.
I was just going to say, I think having those cards on the table means that someone at another table can feel comfortable saying, like, we need a different system. I think it just opens up those conversations.
And that sort of brings me to my next point. You know, we talked about hearing loss and accessibility in that way. That is something really interesting to me. I certainly have friends who are affected by hearing loss and who are deaf, and it makes playing the game hard, and it makes playing the game at conventions super difficult because conventions are loud, and, you know, often in these places with terrible acoustics that, you know, you're jamming as many tables into a, you know, hotel conference room as you can, and it makes for real issues for somebody who wants to sit down and play any game. I just really, for my own curiosity, I'd love to know how you're making things more accessible for people with hearing loss.
So I suffer from hearing loss that is becoming very significant, and it's mostly men's voices. It's called low frequency hearing loss and will eventually be all hearing loss. So right now my difficulty is male voices, which is while playing games, unfortunately, like, there's still more men at my tables than women, so it makes it difficult sometimes.
Sure. Or while podcasting with two dudes.
I have these crazy intense headphones that I just blast at full volume. It's and they're like noise canceling. So that's how I hear when I podcast or when I stream. So what I'm hoping for, because a lot of this is costly, so I'm not sure how much we can implement in our first year, because a lot of our first year is out of pocket, but hopefully we'll be a not-for-profit organization so we can get some government assisting in implementing these strategies. I want to get some FM. They're like FM transmitters. I'm not very good at technology, so I'm not sure if that's exactly what they are, but my father, who's deaf, has them all the time. He puts them on the middle of the table, and they connect to his hearing aids, and they amplify the voices, but not the sound, like not the white noise around him. So I'd like to have those available for anyone who might need it to go at the table, as well as I'm learning ASL. So I'm hoping that if somebody that comes this year, I can at least help conversationally them play if I need to by interpreting, though I'm slow currently. But I'm hoping in the future years we can have interpreters there ready on hand for anybody to use. As well with that, myself and a group of deaf players and a couple ASL interpreters are trying, it's a slow process, but we are trying to compile a ASL for D&D companion, not exactly a book, maybe like a video series or an application where we create signs for the classes, for the races, for the spells, because nobody wants to finger spell prestidigitation. No. So that eventually in the future there can be an app where someone who's not, like, the deaf people can learn it in ASL, but people who aren't deaf, who are DMing for somebody that might be deaf, can pull it up and be like, oh, here's the sign for, like, Ranger, here's the sign for prestidigitation, as I said, and, like, here's the sign for all these spells, and have it categorized and nice and neat so that it just makes it so much more accessible to play D&D.
Oh man, that's blowing my mind. That is a great idea. Wow, really, really cool ideas coming out of UNCon and your brain, Misty. So thank you for that. Certainly, we should talk more off mic. I'd love to know how I can help, sort of, with that initiative and what we can do.
It's a definite slow process because everyone I know who is deaf who plays D&D, like I said, we have full-time jobs, and ASL is regional, so I'm Canadian, so half of what they sign is American because I only know American players that are deaf, and I don't know half the time, like, what sign is that? Because ASL is like other languages, like country to country, it's different. So I'm like, I don't know what that means. So it's been an interesting process, so it's going to take some time.
It sounds like it would take a lot of work, even if you did have full time to dedicate to that. But it is very, very cool that you're doing that, and UNCon is very, very cool. What are the dates and location of UNCon one more time for our listeners?
It would be September 8th this year. It's just the one day this year. It's September 8th, 2018. It's at the Evinrude Center in Peterborough/Nogajiwanong, Ontario.
Excellent. And it's going to be huge. Bring your kids, then send them home, play some games yourself. And who's going to be there? You know, you've mentioned that you've got some guests, you've got some panels going on.
So for the panel this year, we only have the one. It's a cosplay panel of 2 local cosplayers. Like I said, we're very focused on local. And our 2 cosplayers, one is a friend of mine named Amber. She goes by the cosplay name Berlin Nova. And another one who's also an ECE like myself. His name is Matt, but he goes by the Protector of Peterborough. He does some great work, like free hospital visits to children, dressed up as their favorite superheroes kind of thing. They're both doing a cosplay panel together.
I'm just excited about the enthusiasm from the community of people that we've got. Like it's really a committee of people that have sort of come together, and everyone's sort of pitching in where they can, and it feels like a community effort to build something, which I think is the most D&D thing about it, is that it's a shared experience. And I like that everyone's sort of putting in their little bits, and it's not just one person who is shouldering all the responsibility. And as much as it is Misty's baby, it's taking a village to raise it.
Oh, yeah. And it won't always be my baby. It is, I made the decision when this thing was up and going. I was talking to some people that are local, and I'm like, you know what? It's about the community. I don't want it to be about, like, I don't want to be the center of this. I don't want this to be a one-woman show. I want it to be a community show. So there is a board of directors. I'm just one of the directors. I'm just one person. And in future years, it's up to the board who wants to run it and who's going to do this. It's all going to be board decision. It doesn't come down to my word. It comes down to the community's word, you know?
Yeah, people should definitely check out UNCon. And Dan, with respect to your art, I just want to talk about the logo for UNCon real quick. You agreed to do the logo because you were like, this sounds amazing. I want to help out. How did you come up with it?
Well, I mean, I've been a graphic designer for a couple of decades now. My formal training is in fine arts. I painted through university. I was in advertising for a long time. I work with dogs currently, but I'm looking to get back into advertising and marketing. But I've always been freelancing, and logos they're like the most fun thing that I do with that. I love building them. So as soon as she started talking about it, I think as soon as Misty created the Facebook group, I was like already starting to work on logos before we even talked about it. And I just started posting some stuff up. And I think the first instinct, like once we decided on a name, the first instincts I had was very similar to what we ended up with, which was sort of that UN look, with a bit of, you know, curvature and pushing everything together. And I really wanted, like, we tried a few different things with like integrating some dragon iconography and some other things like that. But I think what worked was keeping it simple and playing so that it's flexible. We used the D20 to illustrate gaming, and it happened to work out that this year is still like on the die. So we fit that in there, but I really wanted to feel close so that it reflected the idea of a community that's coming together. It's that we're all a part of something, even though we're different, which is why we're using, when you see the colored version, there's 2 different shades of purple that we use. And I just wanted to be simple, straightforward, something easy to recognize, and something that was flexible enough that if we wanted to play with it a little bit, it's got some room to move. And that's how I ended up coming up with the logo.
Well, it's a beautiful logo. Really, really nice. I work in advertising. So I see a lot of logos. You probably know more about it than me because you actually make them, but this is a really, really awesome logo. Well, thank you both for joining me today on Tabletop Babble. Before we go, if people want to learn more about you and they want to learn more about UNCon, where can they go and what should they do, Misty?
Well, if you want to learn about me, you can just find me on Twitter, Misty Vander. Well, I'm always on Twitter. For UNCon, you can find us at uncon.ca. Once again, designed by Dan, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful website. Just loving it. It's built by my partner Todd. Yes. So Dan is the beauty, and Todd is the back end of that.
I thought you were going to say the beast, and I was like, this is a really weird metaphor we're going down right now that you're calling your partner.
Especially when you see me in real life. I'm a big hairy bearded guy. And Todd's very boyish. He's
yeah. That's a good way
no,
to
he's
describe him.
he's a handsome man.
Yeah, so you can find out about Uncon on uncon.ca. We also have the Facebook group Unconventional Gaming Convention if you want to follow us on there, or on Twitter at UnconPTBO Gaming. You can find us all over on the interwebs. Just follow us for some updates and for what we got going on.
And you can find me on Twitter at March1 Studios, or if you just type in March1 Studios into Google, you'll find something of mine.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Tabletop Babble. Hope we'll have you back soon. That was a great interview. Thank you so much to Misty and Dan for being on the show. It was really, really awesome to have y'all on. I wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who has been leaving us an iTunes review. And if you head on over to iTunes and leave us a review and it is 5 stars, I will read it out loud verbatim and credit the person who left it, such as Roll South. Roll South left us a review entitled One of the Best, and it reads, "Love the variety of topics and solid guests, all glued together by James's excellent brain and podcast voice." Thank you so much, Roll South, for this amazing review. It is really lovely, and thanks for the compliments on my brain and my voice. I appreciate it. So head on over to iTunes, people, and you can make me say your words. There is one other exciting development I want to talk about that I can finally talk about. Over a year ago, I was asked to work on the next Dungeons & Dragons hardcover adventure that is being released along with James Hake and Chris Perkins and a lot of other amazing people. I learned a ton working with James Hake and with Chris Perkins. They are two of the smartest people around. They are both excellent humans, and I'm sure we will talk more about what went on with that book once it is released right here on Tabletop Babble. But check it out. It is called Waterdeep Dragon Heist. It was announced this week at the stream of Many Eyes, and I also contributed to the second book that's coming out, Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Both are pretty awesome. You can read about them over at the official D&D website on the product page, but we will be talking about them more in the weeks to come as we're able to, as details are released and that sort of thing. All I can say is I was super, super excited. I put a lot of work into these along with tons of other people who contributed, amazing artists, amazing game designers, amazing editors, amazing people who are doing layout, amazing people who are doing all they can to playtest and ship this thing out. A lot of love goes into these amazing, amazing products, and I'm excited to help unveil that process. But thank you all so much. There's a ton of love and outpouring this week on Twitter and social media and stuff, and it's just very, very humbling to see how enormous this community has become and how wonderful all of the listeners of Tabletop Babble are. You all inspire me every day to go out there, create stuff, and make awesome things. And I hope that I inspire you to do the same and have more fun at your games. If you want to learn more about the game design stuff I'm doing, you can follow me on Twitter at James Introcaso and my blog, worldbuilderblog.com. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Thanks to Rudy Basso for founding it with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by Battle Bards. Don't forget that RPGs are like sex. Make sure you turn off this podcast before you get down to business.
Party 13, let's suit up for adventure.
They're the only ones that can save the world.
What?
A fantasy world of magic, monsters, and heroes.
Yeah, hello? Where is that voice coming from?
Heroes like Andar Patron, the star of our story.
Yeah, that's me, but what are you talking about?
Oh, sorry. We're in a promo for your podcast. Did nobody tell you?
What?
Your podcast. Have Spellbook Will Travel?
Have Spellbook?
It's a scripted fantasy comedy audio drama based on the creator's experiences playing tabletop games.
To be honest, that sounds pretty boring.
Well, it's hilarious, and heartwarming, and great, super great.
Whatever you say, buddy.
Have Spellbook will travel on the Don't Split the Podcast network. Start the adventure at havespellbook.com or wherever podcasts are available for free.